Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Library Talk and Everything Else. I'm your host, DJ JC. Today is Thursday, February 13th. I was walking out of my house this morning and I was very surprised by the weather. I had to get a jacket. It is drizzly, it is cold. It is currently 55 degrees in Brownsville, and I was not expecting this weather. I didn't think it was going to be like this. I know there was going to be a change and a shift in the weather, but I wasn't expecting it to get like this. So it is going to warm up. By tomorrow, we should see some hotter temperatures, but yeah, right now it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and it is a little different than what the weather was like yesterday. So stay warm. Hopefully you're okay. Hopefully you're doing well. As I mentioned, today is Thursday, February 13th, and I mentioned that because we are going to be talking about a variety of topics today. So just a quick introduction. If you're listening to the show for the very first time, thank you so very much for finding us. Thank you so very much for tuning in. If you are a longtime listener, we truly appreciate your support throughout last season and this season. So, muchas gracias. For the past 2 weeks, I've had some very special guests in the studio. I had my daughter, Maya Chirinos, come in and talk about the freshman experience. Wonderful show. Last week, I had Mr. Javier Chirinos, who is my brother, and he came by because it coincided with the Super Bowl. And the reason I wanted to get him on the show was because he is a football referee and a sports official, and I know he really knows a lot about football, so I wanted to bring him in at a time when it just kind of coincided with the Super Bowl. But as we were leaving the studio last week, we were commenting that the time goes by very fast, and I've had some wonderful guests, and I do want to thank all the guests that I've had throughout last season and, like I said, the first 2 weeks of this second season. I've had guests talking about fire safety. I've had guests talking about careers. I have had guests talking about the Twilight Zone. Some wonderful people that have joined me in the studio. And the comment is always the same. The time goes by very quickly, and it really does. So as we're leaving the studio last week, my brother and we talked about some wonderful topics related to football and officiating, and I gave a little bit of my experiences with officiating, which I have a much more and a better appreciation for the people that do this, the men and women that are out there doing these different sports, because I've tried it, and if you listened to the show last week, my experience as an official was terrible. Terrible experience. So I have a much more appreciation for the men and women that do this. But we had a wonderful conversation about officiating, about sports, but we didn't get to finish. And so my brother and I are walking out of the studio, and we commented, there's so much more that we wanted to talk about in relation to the Super Bowl. So for today's episode, we're going to do things a little differently. We are going to talk about the Super Bowl, and we're also going to talk about Valentine's Day. And I know Valentine's Day is still tomorrow, but we're going to talk a little bit about both of these topics. And we're going to just do things differently today. Our genres of music are going to be different. We're going to go all sorts of different genres. So we're going to have fun today. We're just going to have a conversation, and we'll see where it goes. But I thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I really appreciate you all being here and allowing me to spend my Thursday morning with all of you. So we're going to go ahead and get started with some music. And again, our genres are going to be all over the place today. So please stay tuned. I'm really glad that you're here, and so glad that you're a part of the show, because you really and truly are what makes me continue wanting to do this, the support that you give me. So we're going to go ahead and start with some music. Then we'll come back and talk about the Super Bowl, and then we'll talk about Valentine's Day, and as the show mentions, everything else. So you're listening to Library Talk and Everything Else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Good morning, everybody. Thank you again for tuning in to Library Talk and Everything Else. I'm your host, DJ JC. If you're just coming back from the break, we're going to talk about two things today. But with every show, we do have a research question. But we actually forgot the research question last week. I was so excited that my brother was in the studio. And once we started talking, we just went on and on about football and such a wonderful conversation that I actually forgot the research question. But we do have a research question, and it's going to be Valentine's related. So we'll get to that after I talk about the Super Bowl. And the reason we're going to talk about the Super Bowl is because we did not finish our conversation last week, my brother and I, about some topics that we wanted to discuss regarding the Super Bowl. And I've already talked about some of these things before. One of my second, I think the second actually, episode of our show last season was about football and about sports. So I talked a little bit about this, but that was back in late August. And so the Super Bowl just happened this past weekend, and we're going to talk a little bit about the game. We're going to talk about the advertisements. We're going to talk about the money that was spent on the Super Bowl, according to some of the research that I conducted. So we'll take a look at the Super Bowl first, but our research question is going to be about Valentine's Day, and we'll take a look at that question and some of that information after the music break. So Super Bowl 59 just passed. This was just this past weekend, excuse me, and I think it wasn't as good of a game as maybe had been anticipated. The score was Eagles 40, Chiefs 22, and a lot of people, me included, would have gone with the Chiefs as going to win the game. The Chiefs just seem stronger. They seem to have had a wonderful season. They had what seemed like all the superstars aligned on their team this past year. And although they did get a couple of breaks on some of their games, they kept finding a way to win. And they have a strong team regardless. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from them. Patrick Mahomes, Kelsey, and some of the other players are superstars in their own right. And they had a very strong team that deservedly was going to the Super Bowl. And the Eagles, I had seen a couple of snippets and highlights of their games. I hadn't followed the Eagles too much. If you know me, you know that I am a New Orleans Saints fan. They didn't do very well this year, but they have a new coach. So we're excited about that. So the Eagles and the Chiefs were set to meet this past Sunday. And I bring that up because leading up to that, you all know that there was a lot of hype about the Super Bowl. I mean, this is a big event. It is almost a unofficial holiday. I went down this rabbit hole of research and I found several school districts that were actually closed on Monday because they wanted to give their students and their employees the days off. So there are some school districts that take Monday after the Super Bowl as an official day off. And so from personal experience, I remember what was it? Saturday going to HEB, and it was packed. There's an HEB about 2 miles from my home. And it was super packed. It has a pretty big parking lot, but even then, cars were parked on the grass. And I had to go in because I really needed something. So went in and out, and the amount of beer that was being purchased, the amount of chips that were being purchased is crazy in preparation for Sunday's game. Sunday morning, about between 10 and 12, again, the same number of people. It was super packed. The game didn't start till 5:30, but it was really, really full. And there is a carniceria, a meat market close to my house that I usually go and buy what I'm going to make from the carniceria, and it was packed as well Saturday and Sunday morning. So the Super Bowl has sort of become like this unofficial American holiday. And if you watch the game, there was a lot of pageantry. President Trump was at the game, and so they go all out. You know, they go all out when it is Super Bowl time, regardless of what teams are playing. And it seems like we watch regardless of whatever teams are playing. I know we have our favorites. I know we have our teams that we root for the whole season. And even if they don't make it, we still plan and prep for these Super Bowl parties. And it's just an excuse to get together, which is always great. But the amount of money that is spent going to the Super Bowl, and even if you're not going, the amount of money that we spent getting together and buying what we were going to buy and dealing with the crowds and dealing with the insane amount of people that were shopping at that same time. We do it because, again, we're going to celebrate. We're going to have a good time getting together. And, again, not the best game. It was a little, I don't want to say disappointing, but it just seemed like it was a bit of a blowout. And so commercials, we're going to talk a little bit about that. And so it was just a really wonderful experience getting together and kind of enjoying the Super Bowl. So I went down this rabbit hole, and I was going to bring this last week, but I didn't, regarding the amount of money that was spent by people going to the Super Bowl. And so, according to these numbers, and this is material that I grabbed from the internet, and that's one of the things about this show, is that it is a research-based show. So if I give you stats, if I give you numbers, if I give you data, it can be backed up through research. And so just to get a load of this information here that I found astronomically ridiculous what people were paying for hotels, just for lodging for one night. According to this, the Omni Royal Orleans was $1,999 a night. Lowell's New Orleans Hotel was $2,199 a night. Hyatt House New Orleans, according to what I found, $5,000 a night. And according to this information, that hotel is across the street from the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana, which is where the game was held. And again, I really wish it would have been my Saints going, because they would have been so close. But $5,000 again a night for the Hyatt House New Orleans, and the Hyatt Regency New Orleans was $3,200 a night. A night. So this is just the lodging to spend the night in New Orleans during the Super Bowl. And so the tickets, this is what the tickets are going for. The average price of a Super Bowl ticket was $8,076 in the final weeks leading up to this year's game, according to CBS. So CBS reported that an average ticket price was $8,076, and they cited StubHub. So that's what they were going by. StubHub, Ticketmaster, all of these different ticket vendors. $8,076 was the average price of a Super Bowl ticket. And if you watched the game, it was full. I mean, it didn't seem like there were any seats available. It was just every time the camera would show the crowd and the audience, it was packed. It was packed. So there's a lot of money. Just for the purposes of my own entertainment, I went down to see what the first Super Bowl ticket price was, and that was $12. So they've come a long way. The first Super Bowl ticket cost $12, and now, again, it's averaging $8,076. Now, the commercials. The commercials. I don't know if you did watch the game. There were some very interesting commercials, some great commercials, and some commercials that were not so great. Sometimes they bring in all the stops. I mean, they go all the way all out on these Super Bowl commercials. You know, it's 30 seconds, it's a minute, where the whole world, I mean, I know I'm exaggerating, but the world is watching this television televised sporting event. And so you really want to get your name out there. And like every year, it's the same companies. If you saw, it was a lot of Uber Eats. It was a lot of beer commercials, Bud Light, and then some companies that I was really surprised that they had commercials set up as well. But it was just a veritable pick of different commercials and celebrities. I mean, you're talking about big names: Matthew McConaughey, Pete Davidson, Morgan Freeman, Matt Damon, Catherine O'Hara, Vin Diesel, David Beckham, Post Malone, and so many others that were part of these commercials. I mean, one of the ones that I really liked was the one with Ben Affleck and his brother Casey about Dunkin' Donuts. And it was such an interesting commercial. But I mean, I'm serious. You brought out Willem Dafoe and so many other celebrities to do these commercials. Little Caesars, Dunkin' Donuts, Budweiser, Michelob Ultra, Bud Light, Lay's potato chips, and all these different companies, as I mentioned, Uber Eats, were all being promoted. And according to the numbers for this Super Bowl 2025, a 30-second commercial was running $8 million. That is what these advertisers were paying, $8 million for a 30-second commercial. And you saw that there were several different commercials by the same companies. Bud Light did a lot of different promotions, and again, with major celebrities backing them up. The average cost of a Super Bowl commercial in 1965 was 37,000. Again, I mean, you have to go back and inflation and all that, but 37,000 was what the commercials went for in 1965. So some major companies and major productions in these commercials, and you saw some were really weird, some were really out there, others were funny, others were a little, serious. I know there was one with Snoop Dogg and Tom Brady that got a little bit serious about hatred. And so you had, as I mentioned, a veritable pick of different commercials that were available for watching. And a lot of these had already gone streaming a couple of days before, but I didn't want to watch any. I actually wanted to watch them in real time. But a lot of them were already readily available through YouTube, and they were already streaming for us to kind of get a peek of them. But as I mentioned, I wanted to wait for the actual game. So a lot has been made about Taylor Swift and her role within the NFL, and it's being called the Taylor Swift effect of the NFL. And so what has brought Taylor Swift into some circles within the NFL is her relationship with Chiefs NFL star Travis Kelce. And it has significantly boosted the league's financial gains, adding over $1 billion in brand value for the league. Now, again, this is a major league. The NFL is probably one of the more impressive and biggest leagues in professional sports. But her addition to the NFL has prompted jersey sales, have prompted people watching the game to see if they can get a bit of a snippet of her. But if you did watch the beginning of the Super Bowl, when they introduced her, people were booing, and that's very unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate that people were booing her presence there at the game. And some celebrities did come out in her defense, including Serena Williams coming to her defense. But there was this sort of a bit of a backlash against her being at the game. And I, again, went down this rabbit hole and I was watching some interviews of some Kansas City Chiefs fans, and they were saying they love Taylor Swift, but they love the Chiefs more, and they love Travis Kelce more. So they were hoping that they would have been able to pull off this Super Bowl win. But again, nothing to take away from their performance and their season. The Chiefs did have a great season, and that's what led them to the NFL. And they would have been the first team to ever have a three-peat, but they just couldn't pull it off. But there's always another season next year for them to see how they can get and how far they can get, as well as hopefully my Saints. But according to, again, the research that I went down and conducted, Taylor Swift has made nearly $1 billion since she started dating Travis Kelce. His Instagram followers skyrocketed from 2.7 million to 6.7 million, and the NFL's TikTok saw over 50% new female followers back in 2024. So ever since the pop icon went public with a relationship with the star, the league has been experiencing an unprecedented financial windfall. And again, people are following the games because they want to get maybe a glimpse of her. And so the Taylor Swift effect on the NFL. Now shifting to the halftime show, because a lot has been made about the halftime show. And a lot of was made when they announced that Kendrick Lamar was going to be the halftime performer this year. And the announcement had been made since last year. And I have to admit, I do not know Kendrick Lamar's music. Every once in a while I hear a song. I know that there was some situation with him and another artist, I think Drake, I believe. And so I think a lot of people were waiting for this halftime show. Again, I am not a fan, nor do I know his music, other than a couple of songs that I've heard. But it was really interesting because after the show, and I did watch it live, I really could go either way. It was a wonderful performance. I mean, he's by himself, and he had a couple of guests on. But as far as the performance, there was no fireworks, there was no pyrotechnics, nothing like that. And so afterwards, I was wondering what the response would be, from those that I was watching it with, and there were some comments of, oh, I don't get that show. I didn't get the if there was a message to that came with it, but I just watched it for what it was. But the next day on Monday, I just started doing some research in preparation for this show, and there was some debate. Some people saying it's the best halftime show ever, and then there were other people that were saying it was the worst halftime show. Now, I don't say it was the worst, and I don't know if it was the best, but there was this kind of this division, this division between people saying that it was the best show ever and people saying that it wasn't very good and it was the worst show. So I started doing some research again, and you probably heard me say the word research a couple of times during this show. And again, this is a research-based show. So I wanted to know a little bit more about it. So I found this article, and this is an article from a Cincinnati, Ohio newspaper entitled "Breaking Down Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl Halftime Performance" by Tama Hall. And again, it is from the Cincinnati newspaper entitled "Breaking Down Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl Halftime Performance." And so I'm going to read this to you. It has been officially announced that Kendrick Lamar was the most viewed halftime show to date, with 133.5 million viewers, and that's 3% more than last year. Some fans were extremely impressed with the hip-hop artist and how well executed and clear his performance and message was. Okay, that's the first part of the quote. For myself, I didn't know there was a message. Maybe I don't know enough about music to know that there was a message behind his show. So continuing with the quote, it says, Lamar's halftime performance carried deep symbolism and that extended beyond today's political climate, highlighting struggles that have persisted in America for decades. His portrayal of Uncle Sam by one of Hollywood's most influential activists, the reference to 40 Acres and a Mule, symbolizing America's ongoing broken promises, and the ominous foreshadowing of oppression, criticism, and relentless attempts to discredit and exploit for personal gain all reinforce his message. Lamar's statement was unmistakable. Game over. And again, maybe it was within the confines that I was watching the game, that maybe I couldn't hear it very well with other people talking, and maybe the sound of the television wasn't all that. But I really didn't get that message, and maybe you all did. And again, I'm not here to debate one way or the other. And some of you might think it was a wonderful show. Others might think, oh, it was lackluster. But whatever your opinion is, I mean, for somebody to perform at that level and in the Super Bowl it's just such an honor. And we've had some wonderful performances in the past. I don't want to say that this was the worst show, because it wasn't. But was it the best for me? And again, this is my personal opinion. I don't know. And again, maybe if I watch it again and I replay it, maybe on YouTube, and just listen to it a little more carefully, it will stand out, and the message will stand out and resonate a little more with me. But again, there's this debate, and I think there is always that debate. I think regardless of whatever the show is, there's always an argument for or against the performers. And it is such a big stage, and you really have to step up, because again, like the commercials, the world is watching your performance. So this is what I want to talk about in regards to the Super Bowl, my personal experiences with going to HEB, with seeing the amount of people that were buying these different things for the Super Bowl and getting ready and readying themselves. Again, it seemed like a holiday, and we were getting ready for New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve. But yeah, it was just a wonderful experience, and we do it every year. We do it every year regardless of what teams are playing. So with that said, that's all my talk about the Super Bowl, and I'm so glad that it kind of fit today, because if we had been talking about this last week, we wouldn't have been able to talk we wouldn't have not been able to talk about some of the things that I wanted to bring regarding the Super Bowl halftime show and the commercials. So it kind of worked itself out. All right, so we're going to go to a music break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Valentine's Day. You're listening to Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Thank you so much, everybody, again for tuning in to Library Talk and everything else. I'm your host, DJJC. And so we spoke about the Super Bowl, and I wanted to talk about that because, again, we ran out of time last week. And now we're going to shift to Valentine's Day. And I know Valentine's Day is not till tomorrow, but we have a platform, we have a medium that we could discuss it. So a little bit of a history of Valentine's Day, according to the research that I conducted and what I found. But as we do in every show, with the exception of last week, we do have a research question that we want to ask. And today's research question is, how much money is spent on Valentine's Day each year, and what factors influence spending patterns across different demographics? And I will tell you a little bit later my experience yesterday at HEB. But let's look at the history of Valentine's Day according to history.com. So let me read something to you. The Catholic Church recognizes at least 3 different saints named Valentine, all of whom were martyred. One legend contends that Valentine was a priest who served during the 3rd century in Rome, when Emperor Claudius II decided that single men made better soldiers than those with wives and families. He outlawed marriage for young men. Valentine, realizing the injustice of the decree, defied Claudius and continued to perform marriages for young lovers in secret. When Valentine's actions were discovered, Claudius ordered that he be put to death. Still others insist that it was Saint Valentine of Terni, a bishop, who was made the true namesake of the holiday. He too was beheaded by Claudius II outside of Rome. During the Middle Ages, it was commonly believed in France and England that February 14th was the beginning of birds' mating season, which added to the idea that the middle of Valentine's Day should be a day for romance. So according to the history.com History Channel, this is what they see as the history of Valentine's Day. Now, again, it's shrouded in mystery, and maybe the true origins of it have kind of been lost to history, but this is what kind of the records hold as the history of Valentine's Day. And sure, there's more, but this is what I wanted to bring as a snippet of what the history.com History Channel says as the origins of Valentine's Day. So I talked about the research question being with how much is being spent, and it is one of the largest retail holidays. You know, you have Christmas, you have Halloween, where a lot of money is spent on candies and gifts and things like that. But according to, again, the research, Valentine's Day is celebrated all over the world. And according to Hallmark, which is the card making company, about 145 million Valentine's Day cards are exchanged every year. Americans spent approximately $24 billion on Valentine's Day, according to the analysis and the business that these organizations and their streaming of revenue and where it comes from. So love it or hate it, Valentine's Day has grown into one of the largest commercial holidays, with people everywhere shopping online and in person for the perfect gift for that special person. Now, yesterday I was at HEB, and I was just walking through the flower section, and oh my goodness, the amount of people that were buying, the amount of flowers and plants and different things like that. And so I just wanted to see, I wanted to kind of check what the prices were. And a very basic bouquet was running about $149. And there were some lesser decorated, I guess, bouquets that were running a little cheaper, but your basic one was running about $149. And so, again, just passing by, I see this arrangement that looks like part of a decoration that HEB would have for the flower section. I didn't realize this particular bouquet was for sale because it was so big and so just there in the middle of the flower section. And it was about 3 feet high, and was this base, and then it had flowers coming out of this base. And I looked at it and I was like, there's no way somebody would buy that and give it to somebody, because it's so big and so massive. But being the inquisitive person that I am, the metiche, I had to go and check the price because it had a price tag. And again, I thought it was just part of a decoration that HEB had there, but no, it was actually for sale. So I went to go look at it, and it is running for $800. Yes, $800 for that bouquet. It's about 3 feet high, and it is this bouquet of flowers, but the base is enormous, and it's running for $800. So, my goodness, that is quite a Valentine's Day gift. So, also while I was at HEB, I just wanted to take a look at the candies, the candies that are on sale. And, by Saturday the 15th, they'll all be half off. But I wanted to see the prices. And again, like Halloween, the bags of candy are expensive. The Twix bars, the Hershey's, and all those different minis that are part of the bag, they are running really expensive. So, according to the numbers again, during the week of Valentine's Day, Americans buy about 58 million pounds of chocolate and candy. About 10.3% of Valentine's Day candy sales are the conversation hearts, those little hearts. I personally don't like those. The flavor of those, just I don't know, I can't do those. About 10.1% of Valentine Day candy sales are heart-shaped boxes of chocolates. And no, much to the dismay of many, Valentine's Day did not start as a marketing ploy, but it hasn't stopped marketers from using the holiday to boost sales or tailor their messages for different people and love-struck audiences. Marketers must be capable of leveraging holidays like Valentine's Day if they're to help business, particular e-commerce sites that are also readily available to sell flowers, candies, and different things. Even small businesses on Facebook and Facebook Marketplace, you'll find a lot of Valentine's Day things that you could purchase and go pick up. And so it's a way to make money. It's a way to spend money. But no, it wasn't, and it isn't something that was developed as a marketing ploy. But with that said, there's also this pushback, and you're seeing this group of individuals that are pushing back against Valentine's Day. And so I found that really interesting. So I want to read a little bit more about that. So Valentine's Day pushback. A Valentine's Day pushback refers to a growing sentiment among some people to criticize the commercialization and pressure associated with Valentine's Day. Often advocating for celebrating love and appreciation throughout the year rather than focusing solely on one specific day. And the key point of the pushback, one of the key points, is the commercialization. Critics argue that Valentine's Day has become overly focused on buying expensive gifts and participating in marketed activities, creating unnecessary pressure on couples to spend money. And so there is this pushback and this feeling that, oh, you know what? Why are we using one day to just focus on love rather than the whole year? And so it has spawned Singles Awareness Day, where some people actively celebrate Single Awareness Day on February 14th as a way to push back against the idea that everyone needs to be in a romantic relationship on Valentine's Day. And it also focuses on everyday love. So proponents of the pushback often suggest that expressing love and appreciation should be a regular part of a relationship and not just limited to one day. And there is this response from the United States. There's a British response, which I brought as well, and a Japanese response to these pushbacks against Valentine's Day. So let me read these to you. And I'm also going to kind of focus on some other things that I brought with me, because one of the best parts of this show and one of my favorite parts of the show is where I get to go out there and talk to various people and ask them questions. And so today's question was, what are you going to do on Valentine's Day? So, and I want to read that after the music break. And I brought some statistics from one of the library resources that we use heavily here within our collection that conducts different polls. So I want to cover that as well. But let me read the British response and the Japanese response to the pushback against Valentine's Day. Then we'll go to a music break, and then we'll come and finish off some of these other things. And again, I tell you, this show goes by so quickly when we're having fun. So this is the British response. As of recently, many consumers have expressed negative sentiments towards Valentine's Day, and it's not because they're single. In 2020, a survey found that almost half of British couples had no plans to celebrate the holiday as it was too commercial. And in 2022, a statistic was found that the main reason why consumers choose not to celebrate Valentine's Day is because, again, it is too commercial. Their sentiments just didn't appear baseless, but a study analyzed in social media data found that the keyword Valentine's Day is associated with such terms as shop and gift. So a lot of people are giving up on Valentine's Day because, again, it has become too commercial. And instead of the term love showing up with Valentine's Day, the term shop and gifts was what was more closely associated with Valentine's Day. Japanese response, and this I thought was very interesting. So, Japanese women are pushing back against the tradition that dictates that they must give chocolates to male colleagues on Valentine's Day, with growing anger at the practice of forced giving. Until recently, women in the workplace were expected to buy chocolates for their male workmates as part of a tradition called girl choco, literally obligation chocolate. Men are supposed to reciprocate on the 14th of March on White Day, an event dreamed up by chocolate makers in the early 80s to boost sales. But there's growing evidence that, I think I mentioned girl choco, and it's actually giri choco is falling out of favor. And again, giri choco literally means obligation chocolates. So I may have misspoken. It's not girl, it's giri choco. For a growing number of people, the pressure to avoid causing offense by spending thousands of yen on chocolates for coworkers is becoming intolerable. Some companies are now banning the practice, which is seen by many workers as a form of abuse of power and harassment. And again, I misspoke. It is giri choco, not girl choco. So giri choco, literally obligation chocolates. And again, it is the practice of on the 14th, women giving their male coworkers chocolates. So there is this growing feeling against the Valentine's Day. I don't know how some of you feel. Some of you might have a wonderful memory of Valentine's Day. Some of you might not like it. So I want to read some of the quotes when I come back from the music break. And again, we're getting ready to finish up. It has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so very much for supporting the show. We're going to go to one more song, and then we'll come back and finish off the show. All right. Thank you so much. Again, you're listening to Library Talk and everything else only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Good morning, everybody. As we're wrapping up our show, Library Talk and everything else, again, thank you so much for being here. So one of my favorite aspects of the show is when I get to go out there and talk to people and ask them questions. So today's question was, how are you celebrating Valentine's Day? And again, I know it's tomorrow, but here are some of the quotes. Celebrate on a different day by going to a nice dinner. So I know a lot of people are going to celebrate tonight or maybe Saturday. Galentine's. So somebody said Galentine's with a ramen noodle themed party. Okay. Hang out at home with my boyfriend, going with friends to the 80s bar here in Bronzeville, planning on decorating Valentine's Day cards with my daughters. And another person said, fighting the crowds at Texas Roadhouse. And oh my goodness, do those crowds get pretty packed already to begin with at Texas Roadhouse? I can only imagine tomorrow, a Friday, and it being Valentine's Day. So it's going to get a little crazy out there. So thank you so much for those that shared their quotes with us. And again, sometimes it lends itself to it, and other times it doesn't. But today it just kind of felt right to ask that question. So I mentioned to you that we utilize a resource at the library called iPoll. And what it does is it has all sorts of surveys, all sorts of polls. So if you're doing research and you want to find out how surveys are conducted, and you just want to find some data on a couple of things, this is a wonderful resource. Again, I need to plug the library, the wonderful staff at the library, the wonderful resources that the library has. So as we're beginning the research process already in February, if there's anything we can do to support research that you are conducting, let us know. Whether it's the Bronzeville Library, Harlingen, or Edinburgh, please come to us before it is too late. So the question for today from iPoll that I went and researched was, was this, and they asked 1,400 participants were surveyed. And the question was, looking ahead, if you had to choose just one Valentine's Day gift, which of the following would make you the happiest? An expensive gift like jewelry, a simple gift like flowers and a card, having a night out with the dinner or show, planning new and interesting activities together, such as taking a class or spending some time together at home doing your favorite activity. So according to the statistics, and this is from iPoll, again, 1,400 participants were surveyed. The numbers are as presented here. 5% wanted an expensive gift. 15% wanted a simple gift. 40% wanted a night out. 11% wanted a new activity. 26% wanted to stay home. And 2% mentioned other activities. And 2% did not answer the survey question. So again, these are numbers that have been conducted by various companies, and this information is available through iPoll, which is one of the library's databases. So our show is finishing up, but I want to mention a couple of announcements real quick. The library is doing what we're calling spring screenings, and we're screening different films to promote our library streaming services, particularly a database called Canopy. And they're going to be showing films that have public performance rights. Now, I wanted to bring that up because public performance rights, what does that mean? That means that if a club, an organization wants to present this publicly to a group of people, these films within Canopy have the public performance rights available to them. So you can watch these and view these in public settings as opposed to other films that do not allow you to do that. So if you're interested, the spring screenings are at 2 o'clock in the afternoons on Fridays in Bronzeville. There's a wonderful selection of films that have been selected. And so if you want more information, visit our library's website for that. I do want to thank Student Media for their assistance in setting us up and getting the radio program going every week. I also want you to check out our Vaquero Radio YouTube channel. There's some wonderful shows that are produced by Student Media and some wonderful programming that takes place here at the university. And one special announcement that I wanted to mention was, with everything that we discussed about Valentine's Day and the pros and cons of Valentine's Day and the pushback, there is something that I do want to mention, and that is that it is my mother's birthday tomorrow, Margarita Chirinos. I want to wish you a wonderful, wonderful birthday. We love you, and we want you to have the best day tomorrow for your birthday. So muchas gracias. Thank you to everyone for, tuning in. If you are a longtime supporter of the show, if you are just discovering the show, if you liked what you heard, we're going to have some guests in the next couple of weeks. Next week, we should have one of my colleagues, Mr. Carlton Nelson, come and talking about gaming, board games, video games. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. And the following week, we should be talking about movies with another one of my colleagues, Mr. John Ferris. So I'm really looking forward to the next weeks, and hopefully you can listen. And if you are again on YouTube and you want to listen to some of the previous shows, they have been uploaded as well. And we're here, to support you, and thank you for your support of us. So thank you so very much. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful Valentine's Day, and we'll see you all next week. Until next time, thank you so very much. Bye.